Now, moving on, a challenge has been brought to the High Court against a ruling that allowed a 16-year-old girl to pursue cross-sex hormone treatment through a private clinic. The family members, whose identities have been protected for legal reasons, have been divided over the case, with the father siding with his daughter against the wishes of her mother. Now, joining us now in the studio to talk through the case is the solicitor representing the mother in court, Paul Conrath. Now, Paul, initially, the first time this case came to court, the court rejected the mother's appeal to prevent the child from accessing this treatment. Why are you challenging this, and do you have a chance of winning?
Well, thank you very much, Miriam, for that. This is a very sensitive case. And as you say, it's a dispute between mother and father related to cross-sex hormone treatment for their daughter. As we know, yesterday, puberty blockers were banned indefinitely. So we're dealing with cross-sex hormone treatment delivered in the private sector and to Gender Plus Hormone Clinic, which is the first private clinic registered in this country. In the High Court, during the course of those proceedings, the child turned 16. And when she turned 16, the matter came back to the court, and the judge said, essentially, because she's 16, because she's intelligent, and because the law says when you're 16, you're presumed to have capacity, and because the case had gone on for so long, the judge said, given her age, given her intelligence, there's nothing more for the court to do. And so that's the end of the matter. Okay. And so that shut Mum out. Mum would never know, was she going to get the cross-sex hormones? Was she not? What was the nature of the treatment she was going to receive from this private provider? And remembering for a moment that private provision is quite different than provision in the NHS. So Mum was very concerned that there wasn't going to be adequate safety in the way that her daughter's condition was assessed. So she's appealed.
Now, of course, the clinic would say that this isn't an unsafe treatment, that, as you say, she's old enough to consent to this treatment, and that it isn't damaging, as the mother claims. I mean, what would you say to that?
Well, we say this, and it's been recognised, this is what the court have accepted today, is that the Cass review, an independent review taken by Professor Hilary Cass, commissioned by NHS England, only given earlier this year, is a watershed moment. It's an extraordinary 4-year project where the evidence has been assessed for this type of treatment. And really, we're in the realms of experiment. We're in the realms where there is extraordinary poor evidence to support this treatment. Also, looking at the Tavistock, the Cass report says the medical practice departed from normal, acceptable medicine. So we have a medical community that lost the plot. We have a treatment that has irreversible lifelong consequences. And we have young people making huge decisions at a very vulnerable time in their lives when, as Hilary Cass says, the brain is still maturing, even to 25.
I think it's really important to differentiate here between puberty blockers, so drugs that suppress the onset of puberty, that stop the physical changes happening, which have now been banned effectively in the NHS and private clinics, but cross-sex hormones, so that's girls taking testosterone or boys taking estrogen, which are still allowed to be prescribed. That's clearly now a discrepancy in medicine, isn't it?
Well, there's a huge concern here, and the concern relates to fertility. We are sterilising teenagers. And who knows at 16 or 17 whether you're not going to have children. Many people come to that conclusion later in life. But one is shutting off that option, making a hugely important decision. And also in an area of medicine that's highly politicised, highly toxic, very controversial, poor evidence. And so what's happened as a result of the Cass report, the NHS have said, even if you're recommended for this treatment, you're not going to necessarily get it. It has to go to an independent body.
But the Cass review does leave open the opportunity for these kind of treatments, because I think Hilary Cass says that although what's happened in the past is unethical and children were effectively experimented on, there should be some sort of trials to see if these treatments are safe, are necessary, are beneficial. How could we do those trials if effectively we're saying that no children should ever have these treatments?
Well, I think we have to start from where we are today and say, what is the evidence for giving a very controversial treatment that has very poor evidence that is going to affect the rest of these children's lives? And we know there's a growing number of detransitioners, people that are regretting this, and their lives are forever changed. So I think, when we deal with cross-sex hormones, the advice of Cass is extreme caution and an independent body. But when you look at private medicine, it's quite different because there's the profit motive, for starters, and then there isn't that independent second opinion. One might say, well, we have a multidisciplinary team, they consider it, but they're all part of the same entity. The profit goes to the same person.
And if they don't treat you, they don't get the money.
So whether that's... I think the challenge, there needs to be the independence, and that's what's missing.
And this case really highlights the impact this has on families. And we've seen the father supports his daughter's decision to go down this route. The mother is obviously distraught that this may change her daughter's life forever. I mean, how do we kind of reconcile the two parents in this case? I mean, obviously they've ended up in court.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you raise a really important point. Here families are being torn apart. Where is the protection for the child? And that's the issue. We see, unfortunately, families are torn apart. But how do we protect the child? And we protect the child by the court being involved. And that's the essence of this case. We're saying the court needs to be involved. You can't just wash your hands of it. These are vulnerable children. This is lifelong treatment, very controversial. The court needs to be involved.
Paul Conrath, thank you so much for joining us, and we will, of course, be following the progress of that case. Now, one of the clinics involved in this case, Gender Plus, declined to comment when approached by GB News, but it did insist it follows the recommendations of the Cass Review. It also pointed out that the clinic has been regulated by the healthcare regulator, the Care Quality Commission, which has rated it as outstanding. Meanwhile, an MHRA spokesman said, "Patient safety is our top priority. It's inappropriate for us to comment ahead of this debate."